So, hello everyone to another episode of the Catributors podcast. New year, and we are back.
Indeed. It's been a little bit, but we're back now. And there's been some stuff in the meantime, so I don't think we're going to try and cover everything since the last edition, but we are certainly going to talk about the more recent news topics.
Yes, we've picked some dev blogs that the more relevant stuff, I suppose, or what we want to talk about from recently, I guess. And we don't have submarines to talk about, but we have carriers, So, or is that, I guess? Because there is a change to the AA mechanics coming. A slightly confusing change, needlessly complicated, but possibly a change. Well, I mean, when I say change is coming, they're starting to test it. It's just the concepts of.
Yeah, it's something that definitely, like the way they're putting it out in this article, it sort of partly makes sense, but then wargaming being wargaming, they've thrown in a big dollop of RNG because reasons. So yes. What they're talking about is splitting up the squadrons in the air into the attacking flight, or once they're actually diving on your ship and attacking, and then all the rest of the planes that are sort of waiting their turn. And that if an aircraft from the attacking group is shot down, it's not going to sort of automatically get filled in by other aircraft, as it were. Because at the moment, if you have planes going around, it sort of takes aircraft off the end, as it were, so that you're always attacking with a full flight if there is a full flight. But it seems like it's now going to be like each sort of subdivision of your aircraft group is going to be considered to be a separate thing. So, the attacking group will only be filled with new aircraft when there are no planes left in it. So, if they do get shot down, I guess as you're setting up for an attack, it'll get filled up. But that will then, I guess, mean that it's a little unclear. The attacking squadron, which I guess means like the squadron in the leftmost slot, the squadron that's sort of going to be the one that makes the attack, I guess is what they mean. Won't be able to conduct an attack for a period of time after it's been refilled with planes. So in theory, this should slow carriers down a bit. In terms of like if they're going into strong AA, they're not just going to be able to potentially go in anyway, even though they're losing planes. If they lose all the planes in that kind of initial attacking flight, then it'll impose a time penalty, which is fine. This first part to me seems absolutely fine. But then we get to the second part with the dollop of RNG. Where I'm slightly more confused about why they've done it this way. There'll be a new parameter that sets the chance that continuous damage will be dealt to an aircraft from an attacking group. Otherwise, the damage will be dealt to an aircraft from the rest of the squadron. So it's sort of what it was saying. Yeah, all I was trying to explain there is you've got your attacking group, which is your leftmost group, and then the rest of them. And it looks like instead of it going to be there's an equal chance it will target any of those groups, it will either sort of flip a coin between the attacking group or the rest of the groups. Which you'd think, I don't know, to me it would make more sense if the priority was always towards that attacking group, but instead there's this weird coin flip element that the player has absolutely no control over whatsoever.
I mean,
so it's just adding yet another weird little bit of complexity.
I mean, we have to add with the coin flip element, we don't know the chance, right? They say a chance. So it could be that there's a 1% chance that it takes the attacking aircraft. So there is a lot that we don't know. Also, it says that target selection will remain in effect for some time after leaving the air defense zone. So it's not that with each shot, sort of anti-air will decide which it shoots. So it picks a target and then it sticks with the target for a while. We also don't know how long. And it seems to be that all air defenses shoot the same thing. So if you're in 3 anti-air auras, all of them will shoot like the same plane, basically.
Which is, yeah, I don't quite understand that part either. It's like somehow all your AA gunners on multiple different ships are all going to magically coordinate with each other to shoot at just like 2 or 3 particular planes.
I mean, what I think is going to happen is, right, you have basically a squadron with I don't know how many planes in it. The small part is like the attacking part, and then there's the other one. And then it just rolls a dice, possibly equal chance for each plane that there exists or something like that. And one plane will be designated, and then everybody shoots that one plane. And it could be an attacking plane, or it could be another one. And when this plane is down, then they roll again for another plane. Or at least that's what I assume is going to happen, because they're not very clear on it. Now, the good news is, if your anti-air actually decides to shoot the planes that attack you, you could reduce the amount of damage they do. So finally, it might be possible to defend against an airstrike. But we just don't know enough about the chances involved.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there aren't any actual numbers involved here. And I don't know, Wargaming have said in the past, we don't want to make things too complicated for players to understand, but here we are with something finally being done with the actual AA side of the interaction between planes and surface ships, which that in itself is welcome. It's been how many years since the year of the CV? Years of the CV, I should say.
I think
we're
4
finally
years.
Getting some attempt to actually revise AA mechanics to make them a bit more meaningful, except what they've done isn't really making them feel any more meaningful, because it's still completely out of the hands of the player. It's still just an RNG dice roll that the player has nothing to do with, and that lack of player interaction, that lack of player agency in that interaction is, I think, one of the primary complaints a lot of people have. So on the one hand, it's nice that we're finally getting some revision of AA, but on the other hand, it isn't actually doing anything to address the biggest problem that a lot of people have with AA, that it feels all very out of their hands. It doesn't feel meaningful. It doesn't feel impactful.
I mean, there is also something that we also need to, I guess, consider or mention is that if your anti-air isn't really that great, it could be that, the flight attacks you and you shoot those, but you don't manage to shoot down a plane. And then I drop you with the full loadout and then I leave. And that means you haven't damaged the remaining planes at all. Right now, with you always shooting like the last plane, it means that you'll whittle down the whole attack over time. You can't defend yourself against the first strike, but you might be able to at least reduce 3 strikes to 2 strikes or something like that. But with this change, it's also possible that if you are unlucky or if you have bad AA, that your AA will be more meaningless. Especially if you have something with high hit points like a Roosevelt. Imagine a Roosevelt comes in and all your anti-air goes into the first squadron, but it's so tanky that it's not really shooting down planes, so you eat a full strike. And then when they leave, all the anti-air did nothing, and there is still very healthy planes left. Depending on how exactly they implement it, it could also help carriers in certain ways. So this isn't just a pure positive thing.
I mean, and also how does this even interact with Soviet carriers? Because, of course, they only have one attacking flight.
Yeah, probably no change at all.
Is that going to functionally change anything versus Soviet carriers at all?
No, but, obviously Soviet carriers are perfectly fine. And if anything, you only need to nerf non-Soviet carriers, right? So that's that AI mechanic changes obviously might even be thrown out again. Because wargaming, like, I think the last major changes to carriers were 3.5 years ago. And for 3.5 years, wargaming occasionally comes up with an idea. It's usually horrible, and then drops it again. And on the occasion where they come up with a good idea, they say, oh, no, we tested this internally and it didn't work. And then they go on with their lives, so. We shall see.
Indeed, like, yeah, it's hard to get particularly optimistic about this. It might result in things being a bit better, but we'll see. The fact that they're looking at it is itself probably the most positive part of all of this.
Indeed. But, speaking about positives, there's some actually positive, I think positives, right? And there is an update on the operations battle type. So, basically, last year, they tried the new operations type where there is not an operation of the week, but you just queue for an operation and you get one at random. And then there are multiple tiers and so on. And they have provided some feedback on this and some, I guess, future plans. So first of all, they just tell everyone again what they changed. And then they said that for Halloween, that has been a while in the past, obviously. For Halloween, they had the old operations back because they didn't know how to have a random queue when you need specific ships for an operation. But obviously, the new operations are what they want to focus on in the future. And they shared some statistics, right? So basically, the peak popularity was 26% of active players tried operations, and this value then settled down to 13 to 14%, which is comparable to ranked battles in popularity. And I think those are very promising numbers, right? Because hopefully, this means that wargaming is actually sinking some resources into it.
It's if we had TC3 here, it'd probably be saying something along the lines of, well, duh, you made it more accessible, widened the number of ships that people could play, and added some variety, and no shit, it went up in popularity. So, yeah, probably to me the most interesting thing here is where they're talking about that the fact that you can use up to tier 8 ships, and that they've had requests to add even higher tier ships, and apparently, they're saying, we're considering this, but we need to solve some technical issues. So it seems like they're open to the idea. That might actually be quite interesting, and with the challenges you can get with even on some of the missions, like it sort of they tend to see you tend to see a lot more, I think, tier 8s in ops than probably any other level now. So I can see people wanting to take their higher tier ships out but not have to face higher tier gameplay, and operations being a welcome way to do that. So, yeah, I would certainly like to see that. We've also talked about possibly adding back different difficulty levels, which so far we've only had on Halloween operations in the past.
Yeah, and, I've also seen a lot of threads where people are starting to fail operations, and it would make sense to have...
They can be quite difficult, like Hermes. It's surprisingly difficult sometimes when you get the battleships all spawning, and because they all tend to focus on the same targets. You've got like 4 battleships sailing along broadside to you, and having shots at your broadside. It can be really nasty.
Oh yeah, it's also once they opened up operations again to like the. Operations have become such a niche thing because wargaming ignored them so much that there was mostly dedicated people who played them. Mm-hmm. But now that they are trying to get everyone to play it, obviously a lot of people weren't prepared for that, I guess. And it makes sense. It just makes sense to offer maybe a normal difficulty that's not so hard, and then something for people who want to challenge themselves. Maybe even something for mostly
people forming divisions in order
Exactly.
to one thing they do actually also address is that there are some like if you look at dockyard operations at the moment, for example, or not dockyard operations, but the dockyard missions, some of them you can do in ops, but others you can't. And I think they actually address this somewhere. And
they say they want a low participation in special events while playing operations.
Yeah, so I think that would be good if they could find a way, even because they actually have kind of done that in the past, that where there've been events or missions, and it'll have like you have to do this much in random battles, or you have to do this much in like co-op battles or whatever. So I don't. It's like they've already got the solution there. I don't quite see why they wouldn't just be seeking to implement that and have it so that yes, okay, some missions you can do it in either, but for others it's that kind of split thing where if you do it in your random battles, it'll go a bit quicker, but then there's the kind of operations version where it has a higher requirement for people that want to do it that way. Because the only other like co-op is an option for all of them, but there are a lot of grind this much base XP or whatever, which is going to take you absolutely forever in co-op, because at most you're going to get a couple hundred XP, even if the matches tend to be rather shorter. So it's kind of like they've already got the solution for that. I just am not quite sure why they're not able to actually implement it.
Yeah, I think it's mostly because they weren't willing to work on operations in a way or form, which is a shame because they had a potential of more content that some people wanted. And I mean, it's like there are just people who prefer PvE or co-op over PvP, right? And there is a large market for that. But Wargaming never really tried to tap into it. And I don't think it would be that much work to maintain both, like an operations and a PvP community. Because, like ships, a lot of things that they design they can use for both, maps they can use for both, right? They just have to come up with an operations scenario. And I feel like they could design those just alongside PvP and then just offer more for people. And it's also why I think it's great that they are finally want to open it up to more tiers, because let's say you aren't really into PvP, right? And you're an operations player, but you can only play operations like right now, at least you can have 6 to tier 8, but you need to grind to tier 6 first. And then after tier 8, it's like, what do you do with the higher tier ships? So if they'd offer people from at least from maybe tier 5 start or whatever, tier 2, then to higher tiers. So if people just are here for operations, they can just do that. They can grind the ships there. They can enjoy that time of game. While I personally am not really an operations player, I feel like it should be something that's only would make the game better.
Definitely. And, there are, I think, plenty of people that, like you say, there is this kind of quite a dedicated community of people that only play like co-op or operations. But there are also, I think, plenty of people who use it as a way to like wind down, or just maybe, if they're having too frustrating of a time with random battles, operations is there as an alternative. And from Wargaming's point of view, you want to keep people in the game. You want to keep people playing. You want to keep people having their client open and looking at their ships and doing things with their ships for as long as possible. So, it's taken a fair while and quite a lot of badgering to actually get them to this point. But it's now that we're finally here and they've sort of gone, oh yeah, it actually has increased the popularity of this. They've seen the light finally. So this is, I think, for the most part, fairly positive stuff.
Oh yeah, and I just hope that this time Wargaming sticks with it, because they stumbled upon something good with operations in the past, and then with their own incompetence, basically drove it into the ground and then abandoned it. But if they, because if they want to make the new operations a success, they need to obviously work on the balancing, ideally offer like maybe two difficulties and then include more tiers, and then keep the mode fresh with regularly adding new operations, right? But if they do those, then they'll have a whole new world open up for them where they can get new players and keep players happy.
Yeah, I mean, it might be even like that. There might be people out there that don't necessarily like the idea of PvP, but are more keen on the idea of co-op stuff. You know, there's plenty of co-op only games out there that are perfectly successful. So yeah, I was also just catching up on the chat, and ops for. I mean, yeah, as Fo's pointing out in the chat, ops for lower tiers would also sort of breathe some life into the lower tiers, because at the moment they are just kind of the bit you go past to get to mid and high tiers. And it's a bit of a shame, because there's some sort of very historically important ships, but the fact that the low tiers, like they've been a bit neglected overall, just because of the sort of overall structure of the game, I suppose. It might breathe a bit of life into like, you know, it might give people a reason to go back and do low tier stuff more often, but you'd have to sort of make the rewards sort of on a par, really, I suppose. But it would sort of depend if Wargaming's really, you know, if they wanted to make the dual effort of doing stuff with ops and also putting a bit more effort into low tier gameplay.
I mean, honestly, I think it would be a smart move in general, because it would make it also easier for people to grind stuff. Like right now, if you start a new game, there are very few new players. So you're probably forced into playing with mostly bots anyway, up to tier 5. And it would probably make the low tier process more enjoyable. The problem I could foresee is you could run again into the player issue. Like if they make operations for a wider tier span, at some point they need to possibly have different types of operations, or have really some scaling, and they definitely in different queues, right? They'd have like a tier, I don't know, 1 to 3, and then 4 to 6, and then maybe 6 to 8, and 8 to 10. All right, they'd need to sort of split operations and split the player base, so they'd need to have enough people playing operations to fill multiple queues. So there could be certain issues, but generally it would be an amazing thing if you could start the game basically at level 1, or maybe at least at level 2, and then play up to tier 10 in operations. And it would definitely attract a lot more people who are interested in the co-op.
I think it's the kind of thing that you could like specifically do a marketing campaign around if you decided to add that to the game.
I mean, honestly, the way they're going down with the PvP part of the game, they might just co-op might be the best hope to not die.
There have been days over the holidays where I've just decided, yeah, I'm just going to play some ops today. I'm just going to play a couple of rounds of ops and then close the game, and that's fine.
But
yeah, it would be kind of nice to have a mode for low tiers. We don't have to worry about tier 4 carriers, and you just, you know, you can just have a sort of a fixed goal that you're working towards, rather than the herpaderping around that randoms can be. Although co-op or ops can still be fairly herpy-derp, depending on your teammates, of course. It's not immune from that.
Yeah, it's still World of Warships, I guess. But yeah, for once, there are some potential good news, so that's nice. I mean, the dev block is still from last year, but it's a good way for us, I guess, to start talking here in the new year.
Yeah.
Then is the next thing I'm gonna talk about is there are Pan American cruises coming to the game, which
Yes,
already
now-
have been changed a bit.
I think we actually did talk about these on. I actually had to go back to the previous blog post, which was the start of November. So we would have talked about this in a previous one. And I seem to remember we talked about the fact that there'd been a community proposed line, and this pretty much ignores that. There's like 3 actual ships on it, and the rest are all, well, you know, this ship existed, and it could have been sold to such a navy and refitted, and you know, lots of could-haves and yeah, it's a fairly made-up line, even for World of Warships, and most of them are derivatives of existing ship classes or just copy-paste of existing ship classes. So yeah, it's not the most original line by any stretch of the imagination, but one of the key features that they wanted to put across the whole tree was going to be their use of combat instructions, and that's the part that they're apparently changing in their testing of it. But it's not going to be the fact that most of these ships are sort of historical nonsense, but the actual mechanical part of it instead. In fact, they're almost going to become a sort of second British light cruiser line, because one of the key things that's changing is they're going to get AP shells only.
Oh, yes. I mean, with the combat instructions, they wanted to be, for some reason, complicated for no reason. It's like, so the original idea was so combat instructions, if you don't know, combat instruction is what some super ships have. If you need to usually fire a certain number of salvos or something, and then you can activate, like with the Hanover, the secondaries for a while. Now, here they had planned that in order to activate the combat instructions, you need to fire off a certain number of salvos in which a specific number of shells must hit the targeted ship. So you needed to fire, like at the T10, 5 salvos, and in each salvo, will only activate if 8 of the shells fired in those 5 salvos hit the target. And it also wouldn't work if you'd fire like with like hold the button down, right? You'd need to specifically fire full salvos with all of your guns and then hit shells or something like that. It made absolutely no sense. And the test changed. Where is the change? Common instructions changed. The progress bar is filled with any main battery hits. So basically, they realized that what they were doing made no bloody sense, and they changed it. So that's actually good.
Yeah, so they are retaining the idea of combat instructions, but yeah, they've made it not be bonkers anymore, like borderline unusable, as it would have been. But yeah, they're also going to give radar to the higher tier ships as well.
Yes.
And they're also talking about a 3-minute reload on all consumables except spotter aircraft, and I would have to look up what the normal kind of reload on consumables is, because I don't know if that's longer than normal or shorter than normal.
It's a good question. I mean, 180 seconds seems long for damage control on a cruiser, right?
Yeah.
I mean, from what I remember, the T10 is a fairly large cruiser. Despite them being light cruisers, I think it has almost 50,000 hit points.
Yeah, I mean, it might tie in with a little further down. It says they're getting specialized repair teams, which are going to restore 80% of the damage taken in any part of the ship. So again, we're almost getting a rerun of British light cruisers, except without the smoke. They're also going to be quite sneaky again. So Yeah. I don't know if this is going to be a massively popular line, just given that it's going to be AP only. But I'm sure some people will find it interesting. But those that are actual South American naval history fans will probably be a bit disgusted that it's going to come out with the ships that it's coming out with. Because, like I said, there's like 3 actual ships that really existed, and the rest are all just kind of made up in their own way.
Mm-hmm. What's I think also interesting is that common instructions boosts armor penetration. Oh, wait, they say armor penetration of the HE shells. How was that changed? Because they removed the HE shells. Bonus common instructions, significant reduction of consumables and reload time. Okay, so I presume they've given the consumables maybe a longer base reload, and then they want to play around with the command instructions to reduce the reload?
I guess so. Which is sort of an indirect benefit to your sort of combat effectiveness, I guess. But it at the same time, the whole thing just feels sort of weirdly artificial. Like we're going to give you these long cooldowns, and then, well, shoot stuff, and it reduces. I guess, but how much is it going to reduce by? Is it going to be enough to offset what's happening with the? Is it going to sort of bring it down to the level of most other cruisers, or is it still going to be higher than normal, or is it going to be a significant benefit? It really doesn't sort of give us any particular numbers to work with.
Yeah,
like if it's kind of going to be effectively adrenaline rush, but for your consumables, based on sort of being able to do hits, then I guess it's not completely pointless, but only because you've got this sort of artificially high thing in the first place. So I don't know, that it does feel a bit weird as a mechanic.
I mean, we don't have any data on what's the reload of the command instructions. Like, they're probably gonna cool down off, or can you, like, how often can you trigger them, and how much will they reduce the reload, and how exactly will all of this work? I presume maybe they don't want to give out a lot of information just yet, because this will most likely change, right? This is something that they've never tested before, and they just came up with right now. So I presume there needs to be a lot of testing. Let's hope Wargaming actually properly tests this stuff.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to this sort of idea in principle, even if it does feel kind of a bit artificial and gamey. But a lot depends on, like, actual numbers.
Also, you've mentioned before that they've now added radar to it, like, so they're getting 9-kilometer radar. It's interesting that the tier 10 basically has a 11.3 base concealment, which should come down to a little bit over 9 kilometers concealment with module and captain skill. So they can't quite stealth radar, but almost.
Yeah.
Also interesting.
They're not going to be Soviet radar ships.
Yeah.
By any means. It also doesn't say anything about radar duration, I don't think. So, oh no, I said it does. 25 seconds. So that's closer to US radar than Soviet radar. Definitely.
It's also interesting that the tier 10 has better concealment than, like, the tier 9 or the 8.
Doesn't make a lot of sense, but who knows?
Yeah.
Isn't the tier 10 basically a Worcester? Yeah, tier 9 and 10 are both actually Worcesters of different varieties. Which, ship that didn't exist or was actually built, but, if it had, it could have been sold to South American navies, totally.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, interestingly enough, I don't know what Wooster hit points are, but this tier 10 has 49,800 hit points. That's a beefy Wooster.
Indeed.
So besides that, they'll also have torpedoes, and they seem to be just going with the copy of the US torpedoes, I think. Like 10.5, 66 knots at tier 10. I think this is an option for the gearing. Like the gearing has two options of torpedoes, right?
10.5, yeah, I think that's... Is that the same torps the Fletcher gets as well? Fletcher
Yeah.
torps?
Yeah, I think that they could be like Fletcher torps. And before them, I think they are Ensign torps.
Yeah, Benson's are like 9.2.
So even like things like torpedoes, there was a lot of copy pasta involved in those things. Let's put it like this. Although they do have different shell characteristics, I think they said that they would be low and pretty fast. So you don't get like the floaty shells. And you get a surprising range because I think they said they want this to be close quarters ships. I'm not sure how they think that's gonna work, but
I mean, if the armor the base armor is going to be better than the Royal Navy light cruisers, so they'll have a bit more survivability, I suppose, if they've got that mega heal. But still, yeah.
I mean, they also changed like the hydro. They now have the short range hydro of the British destroyers and such.
So defensive hydro only, essentially. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a niche line. Like I don't see this becoming mega popular unless they turn out to be unexpectedly strong.
I mean, well, we'll see. It's interesting that they went to such a massive change, right? So because originally even the combat instructions were around HE shells, and they would have gotten better HE shell penetration and so on. So they scrapped the HE shells, they reworked the combat instructions into a completely new system with like I think high base reload of consumables, and then the combat instructions to get them down again. They added radar. There's like, this is not just a small change, they sort of completely reworked the line. And as weird as this line sounds so far, what I really like is that for the first time in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, Wargaming has reworked the concept. Because
that's true.
In the last years, no matter how bad their ideas were, they always stuck to it. They were like, yeah, they came up with an idea, it was a horrible idea, everybody told them it was a horrible idea, they went forward with it, and it turned out it was a horrible idea. And then they abandoned it and went to the next horrible idea, right? Seeing a complete rework of such a concept gives me at least hope that maybe finally they have realized that, wait a moment, we could actually, test things and maybe balance, maybe not go so far as balance, but we could try to create something interesting before releasing it. So, who knows?
We'll see. We do seem to have been getting sort of, it feels like a lot of not particularly interesting light cruiser lines. But I suppose one of the upcoming ones is going to be the US hybrids, and I think there's something somewhere about, wasn't there another destroyer line? Yeah, the second branch of EU destroyers, so that'll be something a bit different at least. Get away from yet more light cruisers. Oh, apparently my pictures...
We were both frozen for
I'm unfroze.
Excellent. Yeah, for some reason we were both frozen for a bit. I'm sure this is perfectly fine. We are all humans here. I can guarantee you we are all humans.
Although I do have a non-human thing on my desk right now.
Well,
I think that's superior to humans, let's be honest.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yep, we have stats for all of the Pan Americans, but they are sort of outdated since the update. And I think this line, I hope Wargaming probably tests that. We shall see. I mean, on the bright side, they are trying something new. They're trying to bring in a new mechanic, sort of ish, and design something that's actually different from all what's there.
I think we can at the very least expect to see other lines in future using the combat instructions as part of their core gameplay.
Probably. It remains to be seen how much how well they balance it and how much fun the line will be. But at least for now, I don't see anything too truly outrageous, except for maybe the almost stealth raider. Like, I mean, at least they haven't gone over into the stealth part, really. It's basically the raider range and the detection range is about the same thing, which is already somewhat questionable, but we will see. Then, besides that, there are also... Oh wait, did I forget something here? There was also what, the Illinois battleship. Same article. An Iowa-class battleship.
Where is that?
At the bottom of the Pan-American article. Almost missed it. So it's Dev block 398.
What date is that? I'm struggling to see it.
It's 12th of December.
12th of December. Okay.
No, wait, it's 8th of December. 8th of December.
I see. New ships close test. Okay, yeah.
So currently there is an Illinois coming with more powerful anti-air guns. I mean, I'll not hold my breath on that one. And
this one with the 8-inch guns. Quad 8-inch guns on a battleship hull. This one, I vaguely remember reading about this or seeing mention of it elsewhere. It's going to be a super Des Moines. Kind of.
With right, 203 millimeter guns.
Why is the Des Moines reload? Let me check that. That's, I think, slower than Des Moines.
I mean,
but you are on a significantly more armored hull, I suppose.
Des Moines fires really quickly.
Like, Des Moines 5.5 seconds, 6 seconds, something like that.
Load time 30 seconds. That's a very long reload for those guns. It has improved repair party. Okay, it's so they say secondaries that higher accuracy. The problem with US secondaries is that ever since the IFHE rework, they basically, you don't have the 1% penetration anymore that you needed for them to be truly nice. So ever since then, US secondaries have become pretty meh. Unless they have something special done here, which I doubt. Yeah, I think that's the usual 127. So they might have given it better secondaries, but they probably won't be doing that much.
Yeah. It's a bit of an odd one. It's, I don't know. It's a variation we haven't seen before, I suppose, unless you want to count the Atlantico with its 9.2-inch secondary guns. You know, large caliber, sort of cruiser caliber guns on a battleship, but they are the secondary guns, and this is going to be your primary armament. So it'll be a bit different. It still feels a bit gimmicky, but I can't say I'm sort of looking at it and thinking, "Oh, that'll be rubbish." It will be terrible for the game. I think it will just be a bit sort of gimmicky and a thing you won't see very often.
Yeah, we shall see. We'll have to see how the guns turn out, I guess. So, yeah, that was the Illinois. Aside from that, there are Dyson and Colossus. Not sure how to pronounce those. Well, I'm fairly okay with Colossus.
Yeah, Colossus is quite straightforward.
The Dyson, I don't know. And Dyson is another tier 9 Japanese battleship, and I have to say I really don't like. I'm not sure what they.
It does
What's
have going
camo?
for it that it's not just going to be yet another of the A140 designs or whatever the various Yamato preliminary designs were called. This one's going to be sort of 1910s design that I think was an actual design or an actual proposal. I don't know. We'll need to get Drac back at some point, and he can maybe talk about this one.
I have no idea if there is some historical thing to the camo, but I really don't like the camo.
It's not terrifically nice, is it? No. I mean, at least the colors aren't horrible, but it's not great.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, well, we've seen worse, but we've seen a lot better. Then again, at least you can now switch out to a better looking camo anyway without.
True. So looking at it, it seems like it's going to be essentially a sort of high tier, not quite an incomparable level squishy battle cruiser, but it's definitely going to be firmly in the battle cruiser side of things. It's going to have 4 twin turret 410mm guns, as a lot of the higher tier Japanese battleships do, which is fine. If it has like the accuracy of the Iwami, that'll be fine, because that's got the same number of guns, but actually pretty decent accuracy. But it's going to have, I mean, it still says it's got 32mm plating.
Yes.
But the overall armor protection scheme, I think we can assume it's going to be relatively squashy. It's also not quite 70,000 hit points, which I think is not awful for this tier, but it might be a little on the low side.
I mean, it says that Dyson has poor armor for a tier 9 battleship in large dimensions, although you always have to take their texts with a grain of salt, because sometimes it's the opposite of what they write. They are often very inaccurate with that, but it says it has poor armor, and
yeah,
it could be.
I am definitely getting some squashy battle cruiser flavor from this. I mean, actually looking at the reload on those, so 27-second reload, 35-second 180-degree turret traverse, which is pretty fast for a battleship. 2.10 Sigma.
That's pretty nice.
2.1 Sigma? I don't know, but that's very good for a battleship. And it's going to be 35 knots as well, which is extremely fast for a battleship that isn't using speed boost. And I'm just looking at those torps. Those look more like the cruiser torps. They're not like the Iwami, which I just mentioned, has the 20-kilometer torps of heavy damage, but also getting seen from space. But sometimes they're quite useful for area denial. What does Heisen have? Heisen doesn't have torpedoes. Heisen, the one that nobody ever talks about or plays. So yeah, it's 10 kilometers. This is going to be like Ibuki's torps or something like that, then presumably. So yeah, that could be interesting. It's going to be a bit different. It's going to have a very large turning radius, so again, a bit like Incomparable. Not particularly stealthy, which is not like Incomparable. Yeah, decent range. Could be fun. It could be fun.
Yeah.
I
yes.
tend to like ships that give you fewer but more accurate guns, even if the platform's a bit squashy, as opposed to. I mean, sometimes the ships with lots and lots of guns can be fun in their own right, but they also can be quite frustrating if they're just going to shotgun blast all over the time, or all over the place.
Yeah.
Yes, as Tom McKeever notes as well, it's also got extremely good torp mitigation. 53% is almost the... God, what is it on Musashi and it's like in Yamato, it's like 55%, something like that.
Something
That's
similar.
Incredibly good for a battleship.
Oh, yeah. And it also comes with fishies, so it has...
Yeah.
Actually,
you're not going to be stealth dropping as you can with the 20-kilometer ones, but there are definitely scenarios, depending on what the drop angles are like, which I think on the Heisen, they're pretty good. So hopefully it'll be similar on this.
It's actually 4x4, so I presume 2x4 by each side, but that means still 8 torpedoes per 8 torpedoes per side, which hit about 21k. So that's a fairly massive torpedo armament. So if you, it's probably not a brawler because it doesn't have the armor for it. But if you get close to that thing, you might eat fish.
Yeah, they're the kind of thing you might be able to drop at a pursuing destroyer or towards the end of a game.
I mean, I have to say,
a couple of enemies left.
The how is it called? It's Saint Vincent, right? The British battle cruiser. I'm surprisingly enjoying that, and it's very squishy, right? It has, I think, 25mm nose, so everybody overmatches you in a battleship. But it has those nose torps that you can basically send almost straight forward. And I have brawled successfully with other battleships because, I mean, they can overmatch your nose, but you have like 30k torps you send down there.
Kind of like the low tier German destroyers with a forward firing.
Yeah.
Torpedo jousting. Except in a battleship.
So depending on those torp angles, the Titan could be rather interesting because it probably has the gunpowder that you want to be at longer ranges, at least early on. And if you survive until the later stages of the game, then you could be a somewhat okayish brawler by just bringing your torp tubes going. But because you actually have the 32mm nose, so you could just go nose in towards a battleship and then you're close torp them if the angles work out. But, remains to be seen. Also, we'll see what changes in the ship anyway.
Indeed.
And then they have also announced a carrier because the game needs more planes, clearly. That's what we all wanted.
I will say from a historical point of view, this is a fairly big gap in terms of I think they produced a bunch of Colossus class carriers, I seem to remember, and they're one of the classes that then post-war went and served with a whole bunch of different navies. I'm pretty sure the INS Virat was an ex-Colossus class. Australia had one. I think, was it like Brazil or somewhere had one? So they kind of went all over the place, and they've been completely unrepresented in game up until this point. But they are more carriers. So yeah. Oh yeah, I think Canada had one as well. So
the interesting thing that I note of this is that they state that she has no secondary armament and a weak air defense. I highly doubt that's gonna survive testing, because when carriers start sniping carriers, wargaming usually acts very, very quickly, because can't have that.
Oh, well, yes, the precious carriers. You can't have the precious carriers getting hurt. The precious babies.
So I would be very surprised if that ship will have weak air defense in the future. As for no secondary armament, well, it's usually not really what makes a carrier work anyway.
No, no, there's very few carriers that have anything to do with secondaries. Oh, here we go. I found the Wikipedia. So yeah, Royal Navy. It wasn't Brazil. It was the Argentine Navy, the Australian Navy. Oh, it was the Brazilian Navy, Royal Canadian Navy, the French Navy, the Indian Navy, and the Royal Netherlands Navy. That's right. They had an extra. What was it? The Carol Dorman, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So they went absolutely all around the place, and I'm pretty sure the not Virat, Vikrant. Right, no, it was the Minas Gerais that was just commissioned in 2001. I'm sure the Vikrant lasted longer than that, though. Scrapped in 2014. Okay, it was decommissioned in the late 90s, so it had been around a while after that. So yeah, these had quite the shelf life,
Mm-hmm.
and they went all around the world post-war. So yeah, 8 Colossus class and 5 Majestic class, which were kind of an offshoot. And yeah, so they weren't the biggest carriers. 25 knots is historically accurate. Yeah, and I think they only had AA armament. They didn't have any kind of anti-surface armament. Because these were like wartime designs that were kind of like, we have to build a bunch of these because we need more carriers kind of thing. So they weren't as fast and they weren't as well armed, but they were able to build a bunch of them.
So, yay, historical ship. Nay, it's a carrier.
Yeah. As the ship itself, yeah, let's have a look. See, it's going to have AP rockets. It's going to have torpedo bombers and HE dive bombers.
Dive bombers that don't really dive, though. I think there was something that they'd have dropped from a level flight or something. What did I? Yeah, bombers that drop HE bombs in a level flight.
Okay. I wonder if they're going to be kind of like the tier 6 ones where you get lots and lots of little clusters of.
The bombers carry a large number of high explosive bombs, but have a large spread. So basically, it's like just carpet bombing an area.
Yeah. 32 mil. Okay, so these are going to be a bit bigger than the tier 6 ones, but it's a similar principle, I guess. 32 mil of armor pen, 27% fire chance. Okay. The top bombers are only going to have 2 planes per attacking flight as well, so it's going to be kind of like Furious down at tier 6, which only has 2 planes for attacking flight. Actually, no, I think Implacable also only has 2 planes per attacking flight also.
No, down there they say they have... okay, it's 3 aircraft per attack run, but only 6 aircraft in the squadron, so you can only have 2 attack runs. I
completely misread that. Why was I looking at... Why was I pulling that, or was my brain just making that up?
No, they said in the top, torpedo bomber squadron contains only 2 attacking flights.
Oh, I see. Right, I completely misread that. So 2 attacking flights of 3 aircraft. I see. Okay. Which is actually, I think, what the Indomitables bombers do. Yeah, it has 2 attacking flights of 4. So you couple that with the proposed new AA mechanic, and it's yeah, its torp bombers are gonna get shot down a lot.
We shall see. I mean, the interesting part's probably going to be the dive bombers, because it looks like that's going to be the special. The dive bombers that don't dive. And you have 3 aircraft attack with, what was it, 6 bombs each, so 18 bombs.
I think overall it's going to be you'll probably see it more often than Indomitable, which is just kind of bad for the most part, which only has its rockets and its bombers, and not very many planes overall.
I mean,
have to hope you can get fires on things and stick fires on things and not run out of planes. It's about the only way in which you could say the Colossus looks like it's going to be worse is that it's slower. That's about it.
I mean, it remains to be seen. It also, like they say, a large weapon. I'm afraid that this will just be like if you have dive bombers that just carpet bomb a large area, then it's very hard to dodge. It's very easy to use, and it's all down to RNG. So it doesn't sound like a very good mechanic if you're just like, yeah, you just go there and bomb this very large area and hope for the best. 27% fire chance and 18 bombs. Of course, we don't know how spread out. So a lot remains to be seen, but
yeah, we'll see. I guess it's more carries is probably not a thing that most of the community is going to get totally excited about, but
at least it's historic.
Yeah. We could also, I think that was the last of the articles we'd kind of sort of pre-picked out, but there's also the sort of
balance changes.
The upcoming one, the early access to hybrid battleships, Pan-Asian Commander, Airship Escort, that's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. So we could skip down this as well, maybe?
Sure.
So it's going to have here we go. So the Lunar New Year stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna finally bring like the legendary captain for Pan-Asians, which has been announced, I think, a while ago anyway. And I think the talents, we already knew that. Like they are. What annoys me the most is that this carrier basically has a special. That this captain has a special buff for carriers for the spotting achievement they recently introduced. Because carrier spotting has been a problem for a long time. And Wargaming never really addressed it, and then had some half-hearted strategies to make it even worse that they then dropped again. And now they finally they introduced a spotting medal for carriers, and now they have a captain that triggers when the carrier gets a spotting medal. So they finally have given up the pretense of caring about spotting, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, carriers spot better than everybody else, just deal with it. And now we're gonna buff them if they spot them. Okay, it's only a Pan-Asian one.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that. They did make some vague noises about overhauling that, didn't they? And then that's just kind of vanished into the ether.
Yeah, they always came up with some weird concept that never worked. Most of the time was proposed to buff carriers. And they were like, oh, people don't want buff carriers. Well, I guess then spotting is fine. And, I mean, I don't even know how many Pan-Asian carriers there are. There is like one premium or so.
Yeah, there is the one that's basically a Saipan. Where is it? It is the Sanzang. Yeah, it's a reskin Saipan. That's the only one there so far.
Yeah, but I'm sure they'll bring a complete line of them at some point. I find it sad because this was so unneeded, right? That basically they have unofficially with that said, you know what? Carrier spotting is fine.
What we were talking about with the Colossus class carrier and the fact it was in so many navies, this gives them so much of an opportunity to copy paste that. So I'm almost certain at some point we'll get like a Pan-Asian Colossus, and we'll get a Commonwealth Colossus, and we'll get a South American Colossus. I'm surprised it took them this long. Anyway, but the captain you're going to get is at least an actual. We've had unique captains and things being added before that were just kind of made up, but this guy was actually a Chinese admiral of the late Qing dynasty and the early Republic of China. So, an actual prominent admiral of a kind of relevant period of
That's
naval history.
nice to see.
Now, I don't think many people, well, I had to look him up. I don't think many people would just kind of have name recognition of him. But, maybe people will go and look him up and learn a little bit more about him.
Possible. I didn't know before you mentioned it. I wasn't aware that this person existed.
This is all going to be through a collection, which we don't think we've mentioned already, by the way. So, yeah.
With very nicely designed boxes that you can open. Opening boxes is what this game is about.
That dopamine hit.
Then Airship Escort will come in, which is what they used to call Dirigible Derby. I'm not sure why they changed the title, but it doesn't really matter. So once again, you'll have... So basically, the last time we saw this mode, it was like 2 Zeppelins. Each team starts with one, and it has a circle at the bottom, and you need to have a ship in it to push the Zeppelin forward, and then the team that pushes the Zeppelin to like the end point the fastest wins. And you can stop the enemy by being in their circle, sort of. And they sort of, I think they met in the end, right? So there was a massive fight.
Yeah, they tended to converge on a single point on the map. Yeah, I'm happy to see this back. I think it was quite a popular mode. Glad it's coming back. Looks like there's going to be a few tweaks and changes, but no kind of, they're not throwing everything out that made it fun. So
they have a list of improvements. Basically, tier 8 to tier 10 ships, 12 versus 12. Wasn't that already the case? I don't know.
I think it was already a higher tier mode. More maps is quite nice. The major, semi-major, minor, I don't know. The mechanical change that they are talking about here is that if an allied airship is sped up at the same time as the enemy one is slowed down by your team, that the allied airship will actually get an additional acceleration buff. So they're trying to, I don't know, speed up the battles a little bit.
Or make it so the battle doesn't drag on when one of the teams was able to gain a serious advantage over the enemy. I don't know. It's can't quite remember what's the problem here was that they're trying to solve. The thing that was a bit weird is that I think you only needed one ship to push forward your Zeppelin, and it's basically both teams always kept the ship in it and kept pushing, and then they sort of the end fight was what decided it. So maybe they'll make this a bit more dynamic in that sense, that you can really like push faster early on or something. Also, escorting an allied airship as well as slowing down the enemy will bring additional experience. Yeah, maybe they want, like it used to be that basically you had just 2 blobs, I think, move under the Zeppelin and then fight out in the center. Maybe they want that you split off an attacking force and try to delay them earlier. You really push into like their actual Zeppelin and then get a head start with yours. I don't know. We'll have to see. They are finally adding the anti-submarine warfare for Dutch cruisers.
Yeah, so that's going to be the next patch. So 40-second reload. 2 charges from tier 5 to tier 10, but the number of bombs per charge.
It's actually a lot of bombs.
Yeah, so it goes 4, 4, 6, 8, 4, 4. But the tier 9 and tier 10 ones are doing over double the damage, so...
I mean...
Yeah.
Honestly, I think this might be one of the... that it doesn't say range. Like... I think at high tiers, the depth charges usually have 2 bombs only on most ships, and even only 1 on the lower tiers. So I don't know. I don't have the numbers in my head of the current depth charges, but for me, these look like they might be the best depth charges they are from plane wise. But obviously, we'd have to see in game how big is the area, and I'd have to compare it to the damage that the current ones do. But that looks to me at first glance fairly impressive, which is weird because they are the ships that they were like, no, they don't need depth charges. They don't need depth charges. Oh, let's give them the best depth.
I'm just looking, I'm just glancing through my port, and for tier 9 and tier 10, 4,200 seems to be the average for the damage done by depth charges. So yeah, they are actually going to pack more punch than the average. Not by a huge amount, but 5,000 versus 4,200 is, they'll do a bit more.
I admit I might have misunderstood that. Tom makes a very good point. Ships or planes. I just assumed that they are planes, but maybe they aren't planes, but they are the ones dropped in the back. And it makes sense because the ones dropped in the back usually have more bombs. So
that's true.
So maybe I was mistaken, and they just get the ones that dropped in the back, and then the numbers make more sense. So no planes
I have to try
for
and
you.
Find ships that drop depth charges rather than have airstrikes. Which you can't filter for because that would be.
Of course not.
Let's check a destroyer.
Minotaur, for example, drops in the back.
Okay. Minotaur, where are you? Too many ships.
I mean, they only say anti-submarine armament.
Yeah,
I mean, number of charges, number of bombs.
Okay, so Minotaur, max damage 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Number of charges 2, bombs in a charge 4.
Okay, so it's the same as Minotaur. So it's probably dropped in the back. Okay, so disregard what I said earlier. Basically, it just gets the same as other ships that drop it in the back, I guess. I mean, why give the Dutch cruisers that have plane drops as their special feature something silly as plane drops for the depth charges?
That'd be silly. They can only use their planes for that one specific thing. The planes can't do both things.
But hey, at least they are finally getting depth charges. That's a good thing.
Indeed. That would at least have been a kind of a unique mechanic of just have, like, you can toggle whether you want your planes to drop depth charges or bombs against surface ships, but instead, I don't know. That would have required actual, adding new stuff. So
yeah, it would have required thought. I think they just took the depth charges from another ship that they already had designed and just be like, yep, they have them now too. Least effort, but at least they got depth charges. So now, imagine if Okotnik would get them too.
Maybe. Ranked battles and brawl information, which brawls will be able to have subs as will ranked battles, so that'll be fun.
Oh, and division's not allowed again.
Yeah. So I probably won't be playing much of that. Then we're going to get early access of the American hybrids.
But don't you want to play 6 versus 6 with a carrier submarine without divisions?
Absolutely.
Doesn't that sound so absolutely appealing to you?
It definitely, yeah. That camo looks not bad, I have to say. That's a nice, rather clean looking. The one they show for the Louisiana. Yeah, some of the preview event camos are distinctly missable, but that one's might be worth going for.
Yeah, I mean, I have no intention of playing that line of hybrids, but the camo looks decent. Like, I like the dark deck and then the more almost white, lighter tone, and just some accents in red and black. Looks stylish.
There's also, talking of permacamos, they're actually updating some of the previous permacamos they've added to this kind of paper lantern style autumn festival camos. Oh. And I offhand can't quite see what the difference is, but I know I've got it for Kaga, so let me bring up my Kaga. and see if I can spot what the actual differences are between what's on the photo. Right, I think it's hard to tell because of the fact that they're using sort of daylight lighting port, but I think it might be, it kind of looks like the internal lighting is gone.
Were they glowy?
I don't know if they're just changing the way that it's illuminated, but it doesn't look like it has that same kind of internal lantern glow that the camos do at the moment. Like the actual pattern itself, to be honest, looks largely the same. The only thing I can see that's different is that there's a little bit of extra detailing around the portholes.
Okay.
And the little flourishes, the little emblems on the secondary guns look a bit different as well. But otherwise, it looks basically the same to me. So either it is literally just those really, really minor differences, or else it's not going to glow the same way anymore.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're just some subtle changes. So. Who knows?
Yeah, they're not camos that you see getting used a huge amount anyway. I mean, they're not the most... they're okay, but they're a bit kind of like...
They don't blow you away. They are like, you look at them and you're like, yeah, all right. And then you move on. Although I like that they have all the... Oh, is that already in the game, that they have all those lanterns hanging from like the cables? I mean, you can't see it on the carrier, I suppose.
Yeah. Do I have that camo on any other of those ships? I don't think I do. So I'm not sure I can check that. That might already be a feature. It might not.
No, it would be really pretty if these lanterns would be like lit in the dark. Oh, another thing. But, you know, looking at it, that could be cool.
No, wait, I do have Warspite, and I've forgotten I have that camo for Warspite because I never use it. So now I can compare Warspite as well. Yeah, it looks like they've taken out, okay, on Warspite in particular, they've taken out a lot of the kind of paneling effect. Again, they've added some small details here and there. Probably the most major changes is that the turrets are now red instead of the kind of illuminated yellow.
Oh, okay.
And probably some other minor details I'm missing. I don't know. I don't know why they're making these changes, to be honest. They don't really give any rationale for it.
Who knows? But apparently they are now slightly different. They also added more food patches. And I'm sure they'll give you more recipes on the homepage like they did last time. Didn't they have even a video with some cooking and stuff?
I mean, as content goes, it's fairly, it's a fairly harmless edition, so sure, why not?
Sure. I mean, we all love food. Speaking of food, there's the dumpling expendable camouflage. And you know what? I think I like that one.
It's quite sort of cutesy. I don't know if that's supposed to refer to a particular character. It looks a little bit like a Moomin, but not really.
I wonder if that's as ears.
But I'm guessing this ties into the kind of general Chinese calendar New Year, Lunar New Year sort of.
I mean, they call it a dumpling. Is that supposed to be like a cute dumpling in various? I mean, it literally
is kind of food that's popular in a lot of countries, but I'm guessing they mean it's referring more to like Chinese dumplings as opposed to, Polish dumplings. or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they turned the dumpling into a character.
Maybe. If the character is supposed to be, yeah. One thing we did also miss is apparently they're changing how flags are going to look. Doesn't give any illustration though. It just says their movements become more realistic, and lighting's also been improved, making them look like real fabric. Okay.
I mean, I usually don't scroll in that close to my flags, but there are some. Oh, there's just the new flags that are coming out. I mean, sure, I'll take it.
Yeah, and as you say, there's some commemorative stuff there at the end as well. So, yeah, we'll see. I hope they don't mess around with the file format too much, because anyone that watches my video knows I've sort of overwritten and created my own custom flags, including one of which is a Scottish saltire to fly on my ships. So hopefully they don't completely mess around with the format, and I can still continue to do that.
We shall see. So there are also new flags, and those are achievements.
Yeah, it doesn't. You play Talk 2022. Doesn't say what that's going to relate to, but sure. I presume Salamander and Hurricane are going to be they're going to be related to ranked battle seasons.
Yeah, probably. You know, I get it. Play, eat, talk, right? You play World of Warships, you eat a bunch of fish, and then you talk in the sense that you insult whoever fed you the fish. It's just the circle of life. I mean, it is a circle, the achievements. It all makes sense in my...
Who knows? Maybe I'll go into a supermarket one day and unexpectedly see a packet of pre-made dumplings that have a World of Warships logo on them. Who knows?
Maybe.
It's not the first time that wargaming products have done food tie-ins. Just typically haven't done it in the West.
True.
Well, I think that about wraps us up, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. This wasn't too bad considering we've had a bit of a gap. I did have my emotional support cat on the desk with me. He'll probably complain a bit if I do this. But... Say hello, Samuel. Say hello. He does not like being picked up. Oh, yeah. No. I'm going to be given the stink eye for doing that.
You probably need to offer some treats.
Absolutely. I'll make a suitable offering later.
So yeah, this is our first podcast for the new year, and maybe we are now back a little bit more regularly. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll be back in the future. Bye.